Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're doing something a little different. It feels a bit like we're stepping into a time machine today. I want you to imagine that we are fast forwarding the clock. We are skipping past the next few birthdays, past the holidays, past the New Year resolutions, and we are landing squarely in a very specific, very highly charged moment in the future, March 2026.
Yeah, it is a date that is definitely circled in red ink. I mean, figuratively speaking, and literally in the charts and the source material we are looking at today. It's a really fascinating point in time.
It really is. We are looking at this huge stack of documents, the charts, and these forecasts entirely centered around the sign of Pisces. And I have to say, usually when we look at horoscopes or, when you see them in a magazine or something, it's light.
Right, like watch out for a moody coworker or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. Or, blue is your lucky color this week. It's fun, it's entertaining, but it is very surface level. But the source material we're looking at today, this feels entirely different. It feels heavy. It feels momentous. I mean, the title of the main forecast document alone gave me pause. It's literally called The Great Awakening.
Which is not a title you give to a standard monthly check-in.
No, not at all.
The Great Awakening implies a really fundamental shift in consciousness. It suggests a clear before and an after. And when you actually dig into the data, the planetary movements described in these sources, it is not hyperbole. We are looking at what the source calls a monumental crossroads.
A monumental crossroads. That is the exact phrase that really hooked me when I was reading through this. It suggests that you can't just keep walking the same path you've been on. You hit a point where you have to turn. You have to change direction.
Yeah.
And for our Pisces listeners out there, or anyone with heavy Pisces placements, maybe your rising sign, your moon, even a stellium, this crossroads is quite literally about survival. It's about redefining who you are.
It is. And the source actually sets the stage by acknowledging just how incredibly difficult the immediate past has been. It validates that struggle for you. It says, essentially, for the last few years, you have carried the weight of the world.
The weight of the world. Let's pause on that for a second, because I feel like we throw that phrase around a lot in everyday conversation. But in this context, the source links it to something very specific mechanically. It links it to Saturn and Neptune moving through the Pisces sign.
Right. And to understand why that actually feels like the weight of the world, we have to break down what those two planets actually do. We need to look at the astrological mechanics of what you've been experiencing.
Let's do it. Let's get into the nuts and bolts here. Why has it been so incredibly hard since 2023?
So first you have Saturn. In astrology, Saturn is the planet of karma. It is the taskmaster. It represents structure, limitation, time, boundaries, and heavy responsibility. It is this very leaden, dense energy. It's the gravity that keeps you on the earth, but it can also feel very much like the chains that hold you down.
Okay, so Saturn is like the strict high school principal who walks the halls, checking the length of your skirt and making sure you are in class on time. He's the guy with the clipboard.
Yes, exactly. He is the principal with the clipboard, and he is auditing your life. Now, you combine that with Neptune. Neptune is the ruler of Pisces. It represents spirituality, dreams, illusion, the ocean, the fog. It is entirely boundaryless. It is the mist.
So Neptune is the art teacher who burns sage in the classroom, plays ambient music, and tells you to just paint your feelings.
Precisely. Now, I want you to imagine that the strict principal and the ethereal art teacher are forced to share a tiny office, and they have to agree on absolutely everything.
That sounds like an absolute disaster. Just complete dysfunction.
And that office is your first house?
And the first house that's me, right?
Yes. The first house is the self. Your identity, your physical body, how you approach the world on a daily basis. It is the I am. It's the interface between you and literally everything else in the universe. So for the last few years since 2023, according to the source, Pisces haven't just been dealing with external real-world problems. They've had this intense war between reality, which is Saturn, and illusion, which is Neptune, happening inside their own personality.
Wow, that completely explains the phrase ego dissolution that the source talks about, because that phrase is so intense.
Internal ego dissolution. That is a profoundly exhausting psychological process. The source describes it as feeling constantly tired, constantly confused, or like you're carrying heavy karma. When your ego, your defined sense of self, is actively being dissolved by Neptune and simultaneously pressured and audited by Saturn, you don't feel like you are on solid ground. You feel like you're floating or honestly drowning.
It's interesting that the text specifically mentions karma, because karma implies that this wasn't just, a string of bad luck for 3 years. It was necessary work, wasn't it?
That is exactly the implication. Saturn brings karma to the surface to be processed. If you are listening to this and you felt like you were dragging around a heavy backpack full of rocks since 2023, that was the Saturn influence. You were processing your past, you were settling debts, energetically speaking.
And Neptune was just making it completely foggy while you were doing it.
Yes, Neptune dissolves the boundaries. So while Saturn was making things unbearably heavy, Neptune was making it incredibly hard to see clearly. You couldn't even see the rocks in the backpack. The source explicitly calls this period a spiritual dream.
A spiritual dream, which sounds lovely in theory, living in a dream. But living in a dream state for 3 straight years, that is incredibly disorienting. You wake up and you don't even know what day it is or who you are anymore.
It is. You lose touch with the ground beneath you. You don't know what's real and what is just a projection of your own mind. And that brings us directly to the core theme of this deep dive. Because the source material states unequivocally, March 2026 is the month the fog finally lifts.
The fog lifts. That is the massive promise here.
The dream ends and the reality begins.
And this is why the source is calling it the Great Awakening. It is literally waking up from that 3-year nap or 3-year nightmare, depending on how it went for you, and finally being able to open your eyes.
And seeing solid ground for the first time in a very long time.
So let's talk about how this actually happens mechanically. What is the astrological event that triggers this massive awakening? Because obviously the planets are always moving, they're always doing something, but this seems like a very specific exit strategy.
The source identifies the headline news for this period as the historic departure of Saturn and Neptune from the first house. They are finally leaving Pisces.
They are moving out. The eviction notice has officially been served.
They are packing their bags, and they are moving together into the next sector of the sky. They're moving into Aries.
Into Aries. Now, for a Pisces chart, if we are looking at this from the perspective of our listener, where does Aries fall?
Aries rules your second house.
The second house.
Yes. And this is the most critical shift to understand in this entire forecast. We are moving from the first house, which is highly subjective, internal, identity-focused, directly into the second house, which is highly objective, external, and value-focused.
Okay, let's really unpack the second house. What lives in that neighborhood? What is the second house all about?
Money.
Money. Okay, I like money. That already sounds a lot better than internal ego dissolution.
Most people definitely prefer money to ego death, yes. But the second house is about far more than just cash in the bank. It is about material manifestation. It is your personal resources. It is your deep-seated self-worth. It is the physical stuff that supports your life on Earth. It is quite literally solid ground.
So the source says we are moving from internal ego dissolution to material manifestation. That sounds like we are going from sitting around asking, who am I, to standing up and saying, look what I built.
Exactly. It is a massive shift from the purely psychological to the very tangible. And this is where the source material gets genuinely fascinating. It breaks down the new roles of Saturn and Neptune in this new house. Because they don't stop being who they are just because they moved into a new neighborhood.
Right. Saturn is still the strict principal, Neptune is still the artsy teacher, but now they are setting up shop in the bank.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
They are in the bank vault now.
So what in the world is the principal doing in the bank vault?
Saturn in the second house is incredibly demanding. The source says Saturn will directly ask you to build a concrete financial structure.
A concrete structure? That sounds very serious, very grounded.
It is serious. It's about long-term stability. It is about cold, hard reality. Think about it. If you've been living in a spiritual fog for 3 years, your finances have probably been fairly foggy too. Maybe you haven't been looking at the bank account because you were way too busy processing your childhood trauma. Maybe you've just been, hoping things would work out magically.
Right, like manifesting without an actual business plan, just vibing and hoping the rent gets paid.
Exactly. Saturn walks in and says, stop vibing, start building. He wants a spreadsheet. He wants a strict budget. He wants a 5-year savings plan. He wants you to understand the absolute reality of your resources. He wants security for you. He wants you to build an impenetrable fortress.
Okay, so that is the discipline aspect. That is the hard work and the spreadsheets. But what about the art teacher? What is Neptune doing in the bank vault? Is he just, painting the money?
This is the beautiful part of the forecast. This is where the real magic happens for Pisces. Neptune in the second house invites you to align your income with your spiritual values.
Oh, I really like that. Aligning income with spiritual values.
Oh, it's not just about making money for the sake of hoarding it. That's just Saturn acting alone. That would be miserly and dry. Neptune adds this profound layer of meaning to your resources. The source puts it so beautifully here. It says, you are learning that your magic has a real-world value.
Your magic has real-world value. That is the massive aha moment of this entire deep dive right there.
Think about what that actually means for our listener. For the last few years, while Pisces were stuck in that thick fog, they were likely cultivating deep intuition, profound empathy, wild creativity, all these quote-unquote soft skills, spiritual gifts. Maybe they were meditating for hours, or writing poetry, or just learning how to feel things deeply without running away.
Things that society usually tells us don't pay the rent.
Exactly.
Oh,
Or
yeah.
so we are constantly told. But now, with both Saturn and Neptune sitting in the second house, the universe is essentially saying, okay, take that deep intuition, take that boundless creativity, and build a tangible career on it. Monetize the magic.
It's the difference between being a starving artist and being a highly successful architect. You still have the creative vision, you still have the art, but now you have the concrete structure to actually get paid for it and sustain yourself.
Exactly. Spiritual gifts are no longer just abstract concepts to be discussed while sitting in the fog. They are actively becoming the primary source of your material security. The source explicitly says, and I'll quote this directly, you are stepping out of the shadows and into a life where your spiritual gifts can finally provide you with material security.
That is just incredibly empowering. It completely reframes the intense struggle of the last few years. It wasn't just suffering for the sake of suffering. It was R&D. It was research and development.
Yes, you are in a laboratory of the soul, you are refining the product, and now you are finally bringing that product to the market.
I think for a lot of sensitive people, especially those with heavy Pisces energy, there is this ingrained fear that money is somehow dirty or that imposing structure on creativity will kill the magic. But this transit is suggesting the exact opposite. It suggests that structure actually protects the creativity.
That is the ultimate Saturn lesson. The banks of the river are what allow the water to flow with force and direction. Without the banks, the water just spreads out and becomes a stagnant swamp. Saturn provides the banks, the business plan, the hourly rates. The firm contracts so that the Neptune water, which is your art, your healing, your intuition, can actually reach people and sustain you in the process.
That is a profound shift in perspective. So that is the big long-term shift happening in the background. Saturn and Neptune moving into the second house. That is the multi-year project you're embarking on. But the source material also zooms in on the very immediate moment. We are talking specifically about early March 2026. And apparently there is still some major action happening back in the sign of Pisces.
Correct. Even though the big heavy hitter giants are moving out, the Sun and Mercury are still transiting through Pisces in early March. The source actually calls this specific window a last burst of personal power.
I love the idea of a last burst. It's like the grand finale of the fireworks show before the smoke clears and everything settles down. What does this burst actually look like for the listener?
Well, let's look at the planetary players here. You have the Sun, which represents vitality, presence, the core ego self, and you have Mercury. Mercury is the planet of communication, the mind, your thought processes, and commerce.
And they are currently in the listener sign. They are right there in the first house.
Right. So while Saturn and Neptune are just starting to renovate the bank account over in the second house, Mercury is back in the first house, actively clearing the cobwebs out of your mind. The source states that Mercury helps you articulate the lessons you've learned over the past few years.
That seems absolutely crucial, because if you have been living in a thick fog for 3 years, you probably haven't been able to explain to anyone what you're going through. You've just been intensely feeling it.
Exactly. Words have likely been very elusive for you, or if you did find words, they probably felt completely inadequate. Saying, I'm just really tired, does not quite cover the reality of my entire ego is currently dissolving into the cosmos.
Right. Telling your boss I'm having a multi-year spiritual crisis sounds a bit dramatic for a Tuesday afternoon status meeting.
But now, suddenly the fog actually lifts. Mercury is right there illuminating your mind, and you can finally speak. You can accurately name the experience you just survived. And psychologically speaking, naming a thing gives you power over it.
The source gives some very actionable advice here for this specific transit. It says this early March window is a brilliant time for journaling, planning, and setting intentions for your birthday year.
Which makes perfect sense. If you are standing at a monumental crossroads, you need a map. Mercury gives you the intellectual ability to draw that map for yourself. It is all about clarity of mind. It's like finally updating your internal software after putting off the notification for 3 years.
And then there's the aspect of magnetic energy. The source specifically mentions that people are going to be drawn to your aura right now.
That is the sun's influence shining through. When the sun is in your home sign, you are naturally illuminated. It is your season. But when you combine that natural spotlight with this newfound intellectual clarity from Mercury, it creates a very, very potent charisma. The source advises using this strategic window, it specifically says the first 2 weeks of March, to actively make things happen.
It says to make important requests or launch projects that require you to be the center of attention, which is really interesting advice for a Pisces. Because usually Pisces is seen as the sign that likes to blend in, maybe stay in the background, operate behind the scenes.
That is the classic stereotype, yes. The chameleon. But remember the context here. This is the Great Awakening. This period is about claiming your power. If you have a passion project, a business pitch, or even just a personal boundary or request you've been way too tired or confused to make since 2023, now is the absolute moment. The spotlight is firmly on you, and for once, you actually have the vital energy to stand in it.
It's really about visibility. It's about standing up in the wreckage of the fog you just walked through and saying, here I am, look at me, I survived all of that, and I have something really important to say.
Yes, I survived, and I have something of immense value to offer.
So we have the money house getting a massive structural renovation for the future. We have the self getting this huge charisma boost and finding its voice in the present. But there is a third major piece to this March 2026 puzzle that the source highlights. And it seems a bit more, well, physical.
Yes, it is. We need to talk about the lunar eclipse.
March 3rd, there is a lunar eclipse in Leo.
Eclipses are always astrological wildcards. They are not like standard, predictable planetary transits. They are rapid accelerators. They bring sudden endings and beginnings, and they often happen quite abruptly. This specific eclipse is happening in the sign of Leo, and for a Pisces rising or someone with heavy Pisces placements, Leo rules the 6th house.
The 6th house. Now that is the house of work, right?
It's work with a lowercase w. It is the daily grind. It is your mundane habits. It is your morning routine. And very, very importantly, it is your health. The 6th house rules the physical body as a vessel. It is literally how you treat the machine that carries your spirit through this life.
Okay, so we have a lunar eclipse, which is a very high voltage, unpredictable event hitting the exact sector of your life that controls your daily routine and your physical health. What does the source material say is going to happen here?
It explicitly calls this event a cleaning of the slate.
A cleaning of the slate. That implies things are getting wiped away entirely.
Yes. Lunar eclipses are almost always about culmination and release. It is about letting go of what is dead. The source suggests you might suddenly decide to end a habit that no longer serves your body. This fits perfectly with the themes of the 6th house. It is a massive daily reset.
There is a specific phrase in the source here that really struck me. It says you are no longer willing to sacrifice your health for your hustle.
That is such a powerful realization to come to. And it connects directly back to the overarching theme of the Great Awakening. Because part of truly waking up is realizing that your physical vessel has to be sustained. You cannot possibly manifest that 2nd house material wealth if your 6th house health is actively crumbling beneath you.
Sacrificing health for hustle. I feel like that has been the toxic mantra for so many people lately. Just aggressively grinding through the exhaustion, chugging caffeine, ignoring the back pain.
And remember, the immediate context for our listener, Pisces have been bone-deep tired for 3 years, deeply spiritually exhausted. This Leo eclipse seems to be the absolute breaking point where they finally stand up and say, no more. I am not doing this to myself anymore.
It's a full-blown rebellion against grind culture.
It absolutely is. And the source actually mentions workplace transitions happening during this time as well.
Yeah, it notes that a big project might come to a natural conclusion right around March 3rd, or you might completely change your daily environment.
But I want you to look closely at the specific language the text uses there. It says the change in your routine is towards something heart-centered.
Right, heart-centered. Because it is a Leo eclipse, and Leo rules the heart.
Exactly. The 6th house is usually a very analytical, dry space. It's naturally ruled by Virgo energy. It's to-do lists, it's taking your vitamins, it's organizing spreadsheets. But this specific eclipse is bringing fiery, passionate Leo energy directly into that mundane space. It is telling you your daily routine shouldn't just be efficient. It should be full of heart. It should bring you actual joy.
So if you are sitting in a gray cubicle under buzzing fluorescent lights, feeling your soul drain out of your body every single day, this eclipse might be the exact moment you snap and say, I'm done, I need a window, I need to be around plants, I need to feel something during the day other than low-grade stress.
Or it's about shifting the fundamental nature of the work itself, merging that heart-centered creative Leo energy with the service-oriented aspect of the sixth house. It is ultimately about finding a daily rhythm that feels emotionally authentic to who you are now. You want to wake up in the morning and actually feel good about what you are spending your hours doing.
This really paints such a complete, holistic picture of the month, doesn't it? I mean, if we step back and try to connect all the dots here.
So let's do that. Let's look at the complete narrative arc the source material provides for March 2026. It is a very cohesive, clearly defined three-act structure.
Okay, lay it out for us. Act 1, the past.
Act 1 is the past. That is the first house transit of Saturn and Neptune that you were just finishing. The era of the fog, internal ego dissolution, the deep confusion, carrying around that heavy backpack of karma. That is definitively what you are leaving behind.
Act 2, the transition, the specific events of March 2026.
This is the awakening itself. The lunar eclipse in Leo forces you to radically clean up your health and your daily routine. It forces you to prioritize your physical body. Simultaneously, Mercury in Pisces gives you the precise words to finally articulate your story, and the Sun gives you the vibrant charisma to be seen and heard by others.
And then we have Act 3, the future, entering the second house.
Material manifestation, solid ground, taking all of that hard-earned spiritual wisdom and utilizing it to build a concrete, financially secure, tangible life.
It really is a profound journey. It goes from who am I to how do I want to live my daily life to what am I going to build with my resources.
And the overarching theme here, the ultimate promise embedded in the source material, is that this entire shift is a reward.
That is the exact word it uses. Pisces, March 2026 is your reward for the hard work you've done on your soul. That is the key message I want you to hear. The universe is finally balancing the scales for you. You put in the grueling time in the spiritual trenches, and now you get the material stability.
It entirely recontextualizes the suffering of the last few years. It proves it wasn't meaningless pain. It was the necessary labor before the birth. You were actively birthing a completely new version of yourself.
I really like the simple instruction the source gives for navigating this transition. It just simply says, trust the ground beneath your feet.
Which is, ironically, probably the single hardest thing to do if you have been walking on clouds or sinking in quicksand for 3 long years.
Right. You step onto the pavement and you're just instinctively bracing for the fall, but the floor is actually solid. It's really there.
And that is exactly why the source emphasizes it so strongly. It says, it is finally solid. You don't have to desperately fight just to stay upright anymore. Gravity is finally working in your favor again, instead of against you.
The source also provides a specific monthly affirmation for this period. I always love when these forecasts include affirmations because they act like little anchors for your mind. They help you actively reset that internal dialogue when you start to panic.
They absolutely do. They are practical tools to help reprogram the lingering anxious thoughts.
So the affirmation for March 2026 is, I am grounded, I am worthy, and I turn my spiritual visions into physical reality.
Let's break the mechanics of that down. First, I am grounded. That directly corrects the lingering Neptune fog. It intentionally brings your awareness back into your physical body.
I am worthy.
That heals the deep-seated second house insecurity. It directly addresses the self-worth issues that so often stop sensitive people from actually asking for what they deserve in the marketplace.
And finally, I turn my spiritual visions into physical reality.
That is the ultimate mission statement. That is the perfect alchemy of Neptune and Saturn finally working together in harmony.
It's taking the ethereal cloud and literally turning it into a heavy brick.
Yes, exactly. A solid brick that you can actually use to build a castle with.
So as we start to wrap up this deep dive into March 2026, the source material leaves us with a final call to action. It explicitly asks the listener to share this forecast with their fellow Pisces souls. It seems like the author recognizes this is a deeply collective experience.
It definitely is a collective event. If these massive outer planets are changing signs, literally everyone with these astrological placements is feeling the exact same tectonic shift. The source then asks a very poignant, reflective question. How does it feel to finally see the sun through the fog?
That is a question really worth sitting with today. How does it actually feel? I imagine it's probably a complex mix of immense relief and, maybe a little bit of squinting and blinking in the bright light.
It requires a period of adjustment. It takes real time to adjust your nervous system to absolute clarity after years of navigating through confusion. But the adjustment is always a movement towards power. It's very much like walking out of a dark, air-conditioned movie theater into the blinding heat of the afternoon sun. It is incredibly overwhelming for a split second, but then your eyes adjust and you can finally see all the colors of the real world.
The text signs off by saying, "I'll see you in the next cycle," which is a really humbling reminder that astrology is just a continuous wheel. This is just one turn of the wheel. But man, what a massive turn it is.
It is a genuinely pivotal one, and I think I should probably mention something regarding the timeline here. Saturn takes about 109 years to make a full lap around the Zodiac, but Neptune takes about 165 years to complete its orbit.
Wait, 165 years?
Yes, which means Neptune will literally not return to the sign of Pisces in your lifetime.
Wow. Okay, so this specific fog, this exact crushing combination of Saturn and Neptune sitting together in your first house, this is it. You will never, ever have to do this specific deep dive again.
You have officially graduated. You have the diploma in hand.
That is huge. You have graduated with honors from the School of Neptune in the first house.
And now it is time to go get a job.
Go get a job. Or, rather go confidently create the specific job that only you are uniquely qualified to do.
Precisely that.
Before we close out today, I really want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought. Just a little provocation to chew on as you go about your day. We talked quite a bit today about the concept of monetizing the magic. We talked about your deep intuition suddenly having real-world, tangible value.
Yes, that was the absolute core of the second house transition discussion.
So here's the question I want to leave you with. If your magic now undeniably has real-world value, what is the price tag you are putting on it?
That is a brilliant question.
No, seriously, think about it. If you are firmly grounded now, if you are inherently worthy, and if your spiritual vision is actively becoming physical reality, what is the very first unit of value you are going to place on your own intuition today?
That really is the ultimate second house question to ponder.
Is that value a demand for a better new job? Is it raising your hourly rate? Or is it maybe setting a completely new, non-negotiable standard for how you were treated in a relationship?
It essentially forces you to stop and treat yourself as a highly valuable, finite resource. You are no longer just a passive vessel for feeling the world's pain. You are an active generator of immense value.
Exactly. You finally have to calculate the worth, and you have to send the invoice.
Send the invoice directly to the universe.
March 2026, Pisces. The heavy fog has lifted, the invoice is past due, and it looks like you are finally getting paid. Thank you so much for diving deep with us today.
Until next time.